Yeah, hi there, it's Guess Who, Nick Dutch, back on the camera again. I'm just doing a follow-up from the previous video, which was basically just continuing the argument from another video which I had done a little while ago on the subject of why getting rid of religion is retarded. Now, information flows around the world, or flows around society, should I say, in much the same way no matter what particular type of information it is, whether this is a conspiracy theory or a political theory or a religion or atheism. There's still authoritative figures who kind of lay down the law of various different types or various different denominations, and there are people who follow that because people like the appeal to authority. We all know it's a logical fallacy, but essentially people just seem to like it, and because of the appeal to authority, memes or repeated messages end up being passed through society. And these days, of course, it can happen much faster thanks to blogs and videos and Twitter and Facebook and MySpace and here on YouTube being a primary example, because people can latch on to the argument. It's much easier to reiterate an argument which has been told to you by a face on a video than it is to actually read a friendly book, you know what I mean? But my point is that information just flows around the world the same way. So everything, and I mean everything, including scientific hypotheses, theories about the way the world works, or the 10 dimensions of the universe, or I don't know, political ideologies about the underclass, all of these things will still have a particular religious component. There will always be authoritative books that people will refer to, and people will probably talk about the stories and the life of the individual who was behind the book, just to add that extra dimension of human interest. Is that really an extra dimension of human interest, or is that basically increasing the cult of personality but working on a different level in a slightly different way? Okay? So I think it's I don't think that we humans can ever properly escape from the gravitational pull, so to speak, of the way in which information flows around the world. But yeah, of course I'm going to carry on the subject of religion, because that's one of the things which I discuss. I am an experimental occultist, which means that I play around with religious ideas in meditation and various forms of altered states, because that's basically just what I do. It's kind of like a hobby, but it's slightly more involved than that, because strange stuff happens, and I'm curious about it. But if I go back to the message of the previous video, namely each and every single denominational style or type of religion is there to answer a particular problem or issue, a certain pain, as I described it. What about the development of your own personal spirituality? Which particular forms of pain or issues that you've got, that you're suffering from, are bringing you to think the way that you do? Or what other ideas do you need to or want to bring into your life in order to try and solve a problem? Now, some of you people know I'm involved with unified deism, or unified deism, to use the American pronunciation, and they're out in Texas, and I participate in the chat room of their radio show, their blog talk radio show once in a while. And there was one guy there, and he said that one of the reasons that he took to Christianity many years ago is because he had issues with his father, and he was told that that particular pain could be fulfilled somehow through the concept of God, through Christianity. But unfortunately he did not quite get that particular benefit. I actually think it's rather underhand that he was told that the issue he had with distance between himself and his father could be somehow dealt with through being given religion. I would have taken a completely different attitude now, is that there may be some ways of thinking which are passed on through some particular schools of thought within religion, which you could then steal from, which would help you to develop acceptance or forgiveness over certain forces in your life. But for you personally, you as in the viewer of this particular video, be honest with yourself. You don't have to be honest with anybody else. You can just be honest with yourself as to what is it that you want to achieve in your life. What is it that is really gnawing at you, that is that you just, or indeed you just have some kind of curiosity about? Is it curiosity about the way that your own mind works? Is it curiosity about what kind of a message you could get from some kind of random situation which happens in your life? Is there do you need an extra feeling of purpose? Are you concerned about mortality? Which particular problem is it you've got? I mean, it might be none of the ones that I've mentioned, but whatever it is, there's going to be something inside you which is going to find a solution. When it could be a real solution, or it could be an imaginary solution, and humans are very good at going towards the imaginary solutions. Sometimes I observe my mother when she has a certain anxiety about something, and then she might watch either a news broadcast, or she might watch or listen to the argument of someone on one of our good quality talk radios here in the UK, and will then sort of sigh a sigh of relief that she's finally heard a message that actually makes sense to her, or is actually appropriate. But the fact that she's heard a message which made her feel comfortable doesn't necessarily mean to say that the pain or the problem or social problem or political or economic problem that is being discussed has actually been treated or dealt with. What it means to say is a pundit has spoken to her. I mean, my mother is a hard atheist. I mean, a very hard atheist, okay? But she still listens to these talk radio shows in a very religious way. And she tries to take on board the arguments. She tries to take on board what's being said, and listens out for the messages which are appropriate for her to make her feel better. Now, maybe that's a good thing, but maybe it's a bad thing. I mean, having a certain quantity of doubt can actually do people an awful lot of good. So, an intellectual balance is useful as well. I mean, it does concern me when I think back to my earlier New Age days, and there were people who would repeatedly use the word science and apply it to their interest in the supernatural. The reason that this was quite so disturbing was that not only did these people have no real knowledge about the scientific method, but there was no evidence in their own behavior or thoughts of any form of scientific reasoning whatsoever, and yet these people would say that what they believed was not a belief, but was in fact a fact, because it was part of their mimetic thinking that the word science was applicable to what they were doing or what they were involved with. And there was no self-doubt, there was no self-criticism, and maybe they were only thinking in that way to make themselves feel better about the fact that they were nothing. Of course, it's very difficult to say precisely what their motivation to think like that was, but they certainly weren't inspired by real scientists. They certainly didn't want to find out about the world in a scientific way. No, not the people I'm talking about anyway. So, developing some kind of religion or religiosity can do you some good. But you've got to think about what precisely it's there to treat, where precisely you get the ideas from that have driven you to think and believe the way that you do. How useful is this to you? And what other changes in the way that you think or in the way that you see the world could be made to bring yourself to a better quantity of rational understanding or rational personal theology, maybe? I mean, I am glad that there are some young New Agers or young occultists and young pagans out there who've watched some of my videos and have started to realise that they may have been even going down the fundamentalist route themselves, because that's where a lot of their reading, or a lot of their surrounding culture within the New Age world, or certain New Age videos, has been taking them. And I've been instrumental in trying to help them to see that they were slowly becoming fundamentalists. And that's good, because these people who I'm influencing might end up becoming the New Age book writers of the future, or the high priestess or high priests of local Wiccan covens within their own geographical areas, etc., and so on and so forth. And maybe there'll be just that teeny weeny bit more rationality coming through for them, meaning that they can have their spiritual and religious freedom without basically going completely fucking insane. And doing without a form of spirituality might not be useful for you. Doing without fundamentalism is definitely good for you, but doing without some form of grounding ideas might not necessarily help. There is a middle ground, basically, and it's not what comes out of extreme charismatic fundamentalism, nor is it what comes out of literalism, but it's what comes out of the application of reason to the memes or blocks of information which you are exposed to and which you have adopted as your own in your own life.